Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you all to our civil society panel. An absolutely critical panel because there is recognition that we need to work together to achieve progress. There is a recognition that civil society is the most effective way to engage communities across Africa. And so this panel is intended to really understand the role of civil society and how we can enhance the relationship, I think, between the partners, the African Development Bank, civil society, and other stakeholders. To really set things off this morning, to give us context, please let's give a very warm welcome to Sifo Moyo, who is the Director of Special Projects at the African Development Bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to this session. Let me start by saying that, first of all, let me, on behalf of the African Development Bank, thank the government of India, the Prime Minister Modi and his government for hosting the annual meetings of the African Development Bank. We've had a great experience here, and it's just gone so well. We're so glad that this is where the annual meetings held this year. There's a lot for us to learn in terms of South-South cooperation with India, so it's a good place to be and the right time to be here. Let me start also by just giving a little bit of background. This year, the civil society meeting really has been upgraded, if you like, unlike in previous years. So upgraded, what do I mean by that? It's that we have included a civil society panel in the main agenda of the annual meetings of the African Development Bank, whereas in previous years, it was really on the margins of the African Development Bank annual meetings. It was on the sidelines of the meetings. It was a forum as a part and so on. But this year, we've actually brought it into the fold. And I think this is a strong signal from the African Development Bank about its commitment to working very closely with civil society and engaging civil society to find solutions to the work that we do, particularly the high fives. But today we're here to talk about agriculture, Feed Africa, our potential to not only feed ourselves, but to feed the world and to transform the agriculture sector. So that's just by way of background. So as you know, our high five agenda or the high five strategies are very ambitious. I want to focus on agriculture. Transforming the agriculture sector is a huge challenge, is a huge lift, is a heavy lift, but that's what we need to do, and we know that we need to work with civil society to be able to do that. In fact, I will go so far as to say that we will not be able to achieve this without the active participation and engagement of civil society. And so we recognize the role of civil society, we recognize the importance of civil society, and we believe that civil society is actually at the heart of a vibrant, dynamic, and accountable societies. In fact, right up there with the Declaration for Independence, that all men are created equal and the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, there are few development truths that we hold to be self-evident. And one of them is that for every problem, a stronger civil society can always be part of the solution. But what we know, unfortunately, from experience and empirical evidence on the ground is that this assertion there's no evidence for it. In other words, civil society is weaker than it should be. And that is why at the African Development Bank, we are committed to a stronger civil society, period. And the reason we are committed to a stronger civil society is because it is through civil society that citizens come together to express their concerns, to offer their opinions, and to hold their leaders accountable and address challenges that governments alone cannot tackle. So there are things that only civil society can do and should be allowed to do. The comparative advantage of civil society organizations is undeniable because you guys have the technical and technological know-how, you have the geographical proximity to communities, you also have the cultural sensitivities that are essential. So all these factors make civil society appropriate and a really cost-effective partner for us at the African Development Bank in delivering the common objectives that we all have. Partnering with civil society is particularly crucial, and when it comes to agriculture, our strategy essentially is to execute the CADIP goals, which is CADIP is the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program. And those goals include eliminating hunger, eliminating malnutrition, eliminating poverty, and increasing prosperity. And that we can only do in partnership with, with the alliance of civil society, with the farmers in agriculture, with the agribusiness, with civil society, and so on. So it's a whole big alliance, and that's why it's really important for us to strengthen civil society. The bank, in pursuing the agenda of agriculture transformation, really seeks to be really seeks for Africa to be able to feed itself, transform the sector. And we're here in India, as I said, we've learned so much from being here. But today at this session, I think we're here to draw inspiration from the Indian experience. The Indian Green Revolution and transformation of the agriculture sector is really hailed as a great success story, and it's one I think that we're going to learn a lot from. So just to close and to summarize, this panel will really give us an opportunity to highlight the role of civil society. What can you do to help us meet the high fives, particularly in this case, the Feed Africa strategy? We're also going to reflect on how effective has civil society been, and and what are the challenges that prevent you from being, more effective. We're also going to explore the ways in which, what are your comparative advantages? In other words, I like to think of civil society, as civil society, I think I would like you to think in terms of what is it that would never get done if you were not at the table, if you were not present, if you were not on the ground, if you were not in the conversations? What are the things that would never get done without you? That's your comparative advantage. So finally, we're here also to explore the strategies and, as I said, to learn from India. And with that, really, Julie, I hand it over back to you.
Thank you. Please let's give Sifo a round of applause. And Sifo joins an incredible panel this morning to continue to look into these issues. Let me introduce the panel now. We have Mr. Sudarshan Suryawanshi. Uma is with us. Uma is with us, sorry, taking Mr. Sudarshan's place. And Uma is part and parcel of civil society here in India. He'll be sharing his experiences from his organization and basically the journey that India has taken in transforming agriculture through civil society. Thank you so much, Mr. Uma, for being with us. Also with us is Kamal Khurana, CEO of FIFA, which is the Federation of Indian Farmer Producer Organizations and Aggregators. Thank you so much for being with us. Lucy Mushoki is with us, and Lucy is the CEO of Pan-African Agribusiness and Agro-Industry Consortium, has been working very hard in this field for a long period of time. She'll share her experiences as well. We have Muhebi Dorothy, who's Deputy Director at the African Women in Agricultural Research organization. She'll be sharing her experiences as well. And we also have David Wilcox, who brings with him really a world of experience and acting really to build capacity and to scale up when it comes to civil society organizations. So thank you so much to the whole panel. Let's give them thanks and recognition for making time. So really, to go straight into the discussion, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, it's clear that civil society organizations have a huge role to play. I'll take exactly what Sifo says. She says, for every problem, a stronger civil society can always be part of the solution. So let's start there. And I want to start by exploring the potential civil society has to transform agriculture in Africa. And rather than analyzing the challenges, I'd like each of you to tell us what you need to enhance, to improve the work you're doing to ensure that it's more effective. What do you need? Perhaps, Dorothy, let me start with your experiences on the ground in Africa, and then we will end, we'll go through all the people working within the African space. We will come to the India experience, then I'll come, David, to your perspectives from a global angle. So, Dorothy, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And first, I would like to also express my gratitude for this opportunity to be here. I work for an organization called African Women in Agricultural Research and Development, and we've been there for about 10 years. And for me to highlight the challenges, let me just say in maybe 1 minute what we do so that I highlight those challenges, because we're not maybe a typical civil society the way most people know it. We were created to support women in agriculture, and our target was to have more women scientists in leadership positions to influence policy in agricultural research. So that has been our experience for 10 years. And more recently, we have entered the space of gender also, working more closely with institutions. So apart from working with women who are more or less individuals, we are also working in gender now, working with institutions so that whatever research they do, the technologies they produce, and the way they disseminate it, it's gender responsive, which means it responds to the needs of both men and women, and the diversity of the men and the diversity of the women. Now, more recent, in fact, just ongoing, and I think some work we are doing with the bank, is we are doing some work on gender in agribusiness. And that is a very new initiative with us, and we're hoping that we're going to scale it out so that whatever agribusiness or agribusiness that there is, we do it with a gender lens. So what are our main challenges? Our program that we did focused on building the leadership and the we had a very robust mentoring program with the women that we worked with. We have triggered a lot of interest across the continent because it has proved, we have proved the concept that actually mentoring and the soft skills that we teach the women works. So there's a high demand for our services, and that high demand, we cannot keep it because we don't have the resources. Resources, whether it's financial or whether it is human resources, the technical resources. The other challenge that I would say we have is that when you focus on individuals, it's good up to a certain extent. But beyond that, it becomes a personal ambition. You know, you have all these high-flying women, but sometimes it doesn't translate into an institutional change. And that's why we would like to focus more with the institutions so that we transform the institutions and we ensure that there's sustainability. But that requires resources. The other challenge I would highlight is there are a lot of players in the capacity building sector, there are a lot of players in leadership sector, there are a lot of players in mentoring, a lot of players in gender. Who is doing what? It's a crowded field, but it's not clear who is doing what. And I see that as a challenge, but it's also an opportunity that we can build on that. Maybe the last, I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but maybe the last one I'll highlight is governance. Because if you're working with institutions, to really have a big impact, the entry point is really government or private, I would say government institutions, like we work with the National Research Institutes, the universities, and sometimes governance is not, it's the way they're governed. Either they fall within the framework of the country governance, and that doesn't always work. And we also tend to find that a lot of focus is put on the high-achieving individuals or institutions. So what happens to the most vulnerable groups of individuals? What happens to the most needy countries? Right. Yeah, so most of the projects that you find is that we are all human. We are tempted to work with the fastest moving. And yet we should actually be focusing on the poorest of the
most
poor,
vulnerable.
the most vulnerable of the vulnerable groups. And we also need to look at the diversity because there are communities which are vulnerable, whether it is men or women. So when you look at gender or women, you shouldn't just look at them as a homogeneous group. They are a heterogeneous group. Yeah.
Thank you for that. When I come back, Dorothy, I'm going to tell you to just respond on the asks that you would have. What do you want from partners like the African Development Bank? What do you want from, a country? What do you want from governments? What do you want from, regional government. So whether it's your county structures, whatever it might be, what is your ask? And I'll come back on that. But Lucy, first let me come to you now and your experience. The groups you've been working in, the spaces you're working in, the need for us to really urgently address Feed Africa and the whole agricultural strategy for Africa, transformation. What have you been doing? What are the challenges? What are your asks as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Let me join my colleagues first to thank the host and say we are very happy and we have enjoyed the food here and the hospitality. And before I answer the challenges that I'm faced with and what we need to do as Africa, first let me say why PANAC, Pan-African Agribusiness and Agro-Industry Alliance Consortium. We were launched in the year 2008 during Forum for Agricultural Research for Africa, FARA, who is the leader for APEX, is an APEX body for all the research institutions in Africa. And they led what we called CADAP Pillar 4. I have seen CADAP mentioned quite boldly in the new Feed Africa program, and that is where we come in. The fact that the head of state in Africa endorsed CADAP as a program that will lead Africa in the transformation of agriculture. We start from there. What does this mean? What is CADAP? And what is the role of PANAC in CADAP? PANAC is a leading platform in Africa, and we believe that we still have a lot of work to do, but our role is to bring together all the private sector players in the region, in the continent, to ensure that we are part and players in the implementation of the CADAP framework and the CADAP programs in the continent. We all know that the CADAP programs which are implemented at the country level, the guiding principles are very clear, that you must be inclusive, there is mutual accountability and responsibility. So inclusivity means we must have all the players included in the implementation of the CADAP. And this is where we come in. As private sector, what is the role of the private sector in the delivery of the CADAP, which all our head of state signed and endorsed on behalf of their countries? And furthermore, in the year 2007, at the Malabo Declaration, there was more emphasis that the private sector is going to take a more active role in the implementation of the CADAP. Clearly, we all know that more than 30 countries in Africa have been able to put together their CADAP compacts. And their CADAP compacts is what we call medium-term investment plans. These medium-term investment plans have been done in the past without involving the other key stakeholders. So each stakeholder has a role to play. The private sector are the pre-implementers. So now, with a platform, our work is to ensure we advocate the involvement of the private sector in this CADAP compact, in the CADAP implementation strategy. And right now, for example, Kenya, we are just in the process of reviewing our CADAP compact. It's actually ongoing because we have a new system, which is devolved government. So we are reviewing the CADAP compact. That means that every private sector and other stakeholders are going to be included in the implementing of the CADAP program in the country. And this means that we are now going to start seeing more involvement of the African agriculture transformation, which is going to be achieved through the transformation and involvement and the drivers. The private sector are going to take up their position, which is driving the agribusiness, driving the transformation of economic development in their countries through agriculture. So currently, we are working in about 14 countries, and each country is working hard enough to bring together its stakeholders. And the stakeholders, we mean all the players working along the value chain. One thing that we must all agree is that the biggest problem we have is that we all work in silos. And this is what the biggest problem we have in Africa. When you work in silos, how are you going to have the private sector spar? How are we going to ensure that we are able to transform agriculture? We can only do this by making sure that all the players working along the value chain, and especially the SMEs, who are the missing link, are part and parcel of driving the transformation of agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think, it's so critical that you have so carefully explained the stakeholders that must come together and the partnerships that we must focus on, the level of engagement that we need to make this successful. That is really critical. And, I think, Uma, I come to you and the India experience now, and I think it leads perfectly into that. India has gone through a period of the green revolution and maybe several phases of that. India has gone through a white revolution. Africa really is in different stages in different parts of the continent, but when you look at the learnings and the lessons that we could take from India, what can we learn about the role that CSOs have played and the lessons that we can apply in Africa?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity. The India experience essentially, I would like to concentrate on the role of some of our organizations in working with the various stakeholders in the agriculture front to improve productivity and also improve the final net take home at the end of the year. I mean, if I put it that way, for a whole family. The measures which we find, which have been quite effective in our context, are that nowadays, after a period of cooperative movement, the government as well as the farming community feels that farmers need to be organized more as corporate bodies, basically. So we are working with farmers to create crop-specific, context-specific, and also, at many occasions, gender-specific farmer-producer organizations. There are close to 1,000 and odd farmer-producer organizations in this country, which essentially helps farmers and the related community to get together and organize themselves far more effectively. So that helps to bring down the cost of input purchases and also effectively link to more profitable markets, basically. That's one of the newest initiatives which is bearing fruits in the recent past. When I say recent past, in the last 5 to 7 years, basically. Our organization, that is ISAP, Indian Society of Agribusiness Professionals, we do a level of leading work on that. That's number one. The number two aspect is pursuing very doggedly the aspect of entrepreneurship in agriculture and related areas, basically. We feel and we have seen, we have experienced that the agriculture and related entrepreneurship helps
Can you speak a little bit closer in the mic? Thank you.
Yeah. Not only to create employment in this field, but also tries to create externalities like investments and also infrastructure creation in this field, basically. We have worked with close to 2,000 odd successful entrepreneurship ventures, which are at the micro and at the medium level, various states in the country, around 25 states in the Union of India. In this context, what I could say is the variety which exists within production and also context in agriculture is helping to be developed as a venture, which has created turnovers which are in $1 million nowadays. I mean, like some of the companies are doing even in rupee terms equivalent to more than $5 to $6 million equivalent of turnovers. That we feel is a very important intervention which has happened with the effective participation of the key stakeholders in the civil society and financial institutions in this area. The third area which we feel have been very, very effective is the area of incubation and innovation, basically. Like recently, we embarked upon the path of we ourselves reinventing ourselves as an incubator. And we help combine technology and mentors who are focused on bringing technology to a larger section of the society. We feel a lot of traction. And one of the things which, if we were to ask for this, is patient capital. I mean, like when I say patient capital, I essentially mean capital which would look for returns in longer terms and also include returns in human capital, basically. That would be our wish to make this a very successful game for everyone, actually.
Thank you so much for taking us through those three key elements. Kamal, I come to your experiences now. What can we learn from the India experience? What are the loopholes we need to deal with to really transform things in Africa, please?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning to you all, and good morning to the distinguished speakers who are joining me on this panel. I express my sincere gratitude to the organizers who gave me this opportunity to be here. I'm very lucky, very fortunate. I'm carrying with me the experience of working with cooperative sector, taking it forward to the corporate, and now finally with civil society in India. As you can make out from the name, I am into a unit of FIFA. It has nothing to do with football as such. This is more to do with our farmers. It's a federation of Indian FPOs and aggregators. And the basic assignment entrusted on me, I joined them very recently. The basic assignment entrusted on me is to develop market linkages. We have reached a stage where farmers are sitting on surplus, and we got to ensure that they get good realization out of their produce. Let me just give you a brief background of what we call as civil society in India. We have almost 1 million civil societies who are into gainful employment or gainful activities on the field. And if we look at the nature, they are trying to create more of jobs. They are trying to improve their lives. They are also trying to see that everybody is engaged into a meaningful business. We call it business because everything turns out to be a business at the fag end. Now, if we look at any of the task which is being undertaken, it's a mammoth task and probably cannot be done by anybody alone. So it has to be a mix of all departments, different agencies, and of course, civil society. Now, if we go back to what was happening in Green Revolution and then what happened in White Revolution, and probably the next revolution is in offing, which anybody's guess, it may turn out to be a spiritual revolution, which has nothing to do with this forum as such. So I'll just touch upon it and move. Let's go back to what happened in Green Revolution in India. We immediately resorted to high-yielding varieties, primarily wheat and rice. And it impacted 2-3 states significantly, which are Punjab, Haryana, and UP, and resulted in very good production. Coupled with that, there were a lot of things which came into picture, which were utilization of chemicals, fertilizer, insecticide, pesticide, land reforms, and also we got into consolidation of land, and then building infrastructure, coming out with utilization of latest farm equipment. All these things put together, and of course, the most important was we were into the clutches of local people who have been lending money and trying to have complete grip on the farmers. From there, we moved on to bank loans, which turned out to be very safe, and it started giving a lot of confidence into the farmers.
Can I just very quickly ask, when it came to the access to finance and the bank loans, were these affordable? Were these easily accessible for the farmers?
Yes, they were easily accessible, affordable, and a lot of input were given by the government of India. They were given on a special interest. Today, again, if you look at it, in case something goes bad, government comes forward to see to it that either they are waived off, or if nothing else, interest rate is being lowered down, or at least some part of crop is being exempted from that. Whereas the moment it remains in the clutches of any local money lender, it turns out to be a lifetime, maybe for generations also they get caught. You keep supplying, you keep accepting the rate which is being offered to them for the produce. Now these kind of things, when it started coming into Green Revolution, we learned a lesson from there. And that's the place where, in every 5-year plans, we started realizing that role of SCO has been growing. It has been growing to such an extent that now they have started hiring professionals from all fields. They are not only trying to develop plans, they are developing plans, they are executing it, and they are trying to be right hand of Government of India. Our basic work is to work as a bridge between what is being offered by government and what all we can do to see that this reaches farmer, and then we also ensure welfare of farmer through that route. Now coming back to, from there we took a lead and got into White Revolution. White Revolution is a real story of success of farmer organization, and nothing can be done unless SCOs get involved, because they have a very localized resource mobilization. They are very flexible, and the way they can operate, holding hands of Government of India, any government as such, is turning out to be difficult if it is being done by any agency. We have a lot of rules, regulations which are to be followed, whereas some kind of a flexibility generally moves with SCOs. Now, coming back to White Revolution where we were talking about, it started with one small cooperative society in 1946. And that took a shape of a vast organization, which took the shape of National Dairy Development Board. And today, if we look at it, such a powerful structure of liquid milk, as such milk producers, liquid milk as well as milk products, is being owned by farmers himself. And the very powerful in the whole system is either farmers or some of their district level milk production units. Although a lot of contribution is there from the government, from financial institutions, other agencies, but the power remains with the farmers. That had gone to the proof that if we really work with them and give due respect to our SCOs, I'm sure anything can be done. Now, if we look at F&V, fruits and vegetable, or if we come down to agriculture crops, same thing is happening. And in this organization, all of us are working under me and Uma, we are working under a banner of IndiGram, the one body which is supposed to be taking care of creating farmers producers organization and seeing to it that they work under a banner, they remain united. And once they are united, we ensure that whatever benefit is being planned and committed by either any agency or government, they are reaching to them. And the second question turns out to be now how to get the best realization out of the produce. For that, now we have built up this organization, which is being headed by me now. The idea is that we must ensure that all produce gets fair price, and we follow all the practices which are desirable to ensure that he gets a premium, which is in terms of having sorting grading at the field itself, going by all kind of a logistic arrangement. It shouldn't turn out to be a small quantity which is moving in a large capacity truck. Your capacity remains unutilized and you land up paying more money. Similarly, now working back and looking at consumers' requirement, especially in India, now we are catching up with the packed product. Most of the things are being packed, either in the form of a shrink pack or small punnets or getting into a fancy branded pack cartons. All these things, if they can be done at farm level itself, it's resulting in creation of job at farm itself. And after that, he gets a good value of that, and all middlemen are being avoided to the extent possible. Although it's such a vast country, I can assume that you have more or less same kind of a situation in Africa.
Right.
Now, I leave it for her to take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kamal. Sure. And I think, David, it brings me to you. And, what seems to be staggering is when you look at farming in Africa, it offers the greatest potential for transformation for the continent. This is clear. When you look at the numbers, a vast majority of farmers in Africa are small scale. They are small farmers. When you look at those who are doing well out of the small farmers, they have a challenge to scale up and move to the next level, even though they seem to be doing well. But many of them, these farmers, are subsistence farmers who are living in poverty. It doesn't seem to make sense that we haven't leveraged the opportunity yet. But from your perspective, with the work that you're doing with community-based organizations, with civil society organizations, what are your lessons and what can Africa do to transform this situation?
Well, this is a great panel because I think, first of all, there are a lot of lessons right here. And secondly, we can kind of use those lessons. You don't have to be in agriculture. You can apply what's going on in agriculture in any sector. And in many cases, the things that agriculture requires have to come from other sectors as well. So just two things to think about as you're sitting in your seats. One is, do I believe I have a network that can change things?
Please, David, hold the mic a little bit closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I believe that I have a network that can change things? So that's a focus I think every person in this room should have, is building a personal network that can affect change. You see on the dais here multiple leaders who have built networks that enable them to affect change. We all need to do that as individuals, as leaders. It's not just our organizations that are relevant here. It's our personal networks. And this conference is really, really unique because you've got, 54 countries from Africa. You've got a country in India that has 24 states.
29.
39 states. Each of those states is as big as many African countries.
Yes.
So there's a real similarity there, and I work a lot with social enterprises, and one of the things that they tell me is it's often easier to enter an African country than it is to go to the next state in India. So, that's kind of, the problems are very, very similar. So 4 concepts that come from our other speakers, and I'm going to be oversimplifying here, obviously. Award is an organization I know, and I see Award as a way to leverage underutilized resources. It's a lever that gets pulled by finding the underutilized resources, both in the form of the women scientists, but also in the form of the women farmers, and engaging them through networks to create value. And when you get that underutilized resource, you get massively more value creation than you do when you're operating at the highly utilized resources. So that's a lesson you can apply in any space. Lucy, I think, is a really great example of visibility on who can actually make change and breaking down silos so that the people who can actually make change are integrated, they're actually working together. We spend so much time in partnerships where we sit around the table trying to figure out who the hell is actually going to do work here. Who's got an agenda that's different than the agenda that is really the purpose of this partnership? Who knows models that could help us accomplish this, and who doesn't really have a network that can bring any models to the table? So Lucy's focused on cutting through all that crap and finding the people who can actually get work done. Every one of us have that opportunity. Every one of us can do that kind of work in our own organizations. Uma, it's really interesting when you look at India because you're going to be told by a lot of people that the way Africa should scale is like China. The way Africa should scale is like the common market. The way Africa should scale is like big farms and pick a country. And everybody in civil society knows at their heart that doesn't work. We've wasted billions and billions of dollars trying to import models from other places that don't work. India figured that out. They don't want somebody else investing in their country and owning their assets, and then them getting a little bit of the pie and the rest of the pie leaving. The producer cooperatives are a model built to avoid that. If you are running your business based on producer cooperatives, you're never going to adopt the Chinese model. It's anathema to the Chinese model. It's the opposite. And that producer cooperative model in India is phenomenally successful. Phenomenally successful. You have an organization like Amul that's a $3 billion profitable business cooperative model with professional management, with professional branding, with no resources being siphoned off by people who just happen to have a truck and a storage facility, or people who happen to be able to buy the product low and sell it high. The resources are given to the people who actually produce. And then they are partnered with people who actually produce on the management side, who actually produce on the marketing side. So again, your network should enable you to do that kind of work. Whatever space you work in, your network should enable you. So if you combine those three things, can your network find the underutilized resources? Can your network find the people who can actually affect change? And can your network find the models that are appropriate and scalable in your environment? We were at the Fashionomics panel yesterday. The panel was filled with very creative African leaders. I made the point, it was contested, that the creativity in Africa would absolutely suggest that you want a creativity-driven model for fashion, for artisans, for production. You do not want the massive orders from the north coming into massive building filled with massive people doing massive grunt work so you can have jobs. That's not what you want. But that is what you will have recommended to you by many people. And so to me, a lot of what civil society is designed to do is help you avoid that experience, help you figure out a better way to do it, help you find the leaders. Prime Minister Modi talked about the solar mamas in his presentation. The solar mamas we consider to be one of the 10 best scale opportunities in the entire world. It's unique in that it doesn't just find this underutilized resources, in this case women, but it has the faith in what women can do to ship the parts of the system to the women who assemble the solar system in the village and then install and maintain it. Now, that is so different than assembling the system in a manufacturing facility and shipping it to people who you hope can keep it going. These are people who are maintaining the system they built. Totally different model. Very scalable. That process reduces the cost of the system by 50%. So that's the kind of custom scale model that you can take. I mean, India's already paid Barefoot College to move that model to 80 other countries. But now it needs to scale in those 80 countries. People who care about energy in civil society, some of them should help scale that model. They shouldn't invent their own model. Right. They should find the model that can scale and scale it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, David. And, you know, it just takes me back to several decades before in Kenya when our cooperative movements were strong in agriculture. And there was a momentum in agriculture. And then there was a political move to destroy those cooperative movements. And sometimes in some of our environments, it actually has been politics that has pulled back our progress. That, in fact, the will and the leadership to drive Feed Africa at national level is absolutely imperative, and ability for civil society organizations to work within our countries is driven by that will. And, you know, Sifo, you've heard the comments from all the panelists so far. I just really want to tap into your thoughts, especially when we look at the human element, that now we're seeing the commitment, as Lucy has told us, from African governments to move forward the agricultural agenda. And yet now we still do have the politics between the CSOs and between government, between private sector and the development world. And we have to manage all these things. So from your perspective, can we successfully bring all these stakeholders together to achieve this common agenda?
It's on, okay. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, it's an interesting question. The first thing I want to say is, in terms of civil society, the first thing we need to do is to work together. I think it was Dorothy who said it's a crowded field in her space, you know. I actually look at it as a fragmented field rather than a crowded field. But part of the reason we're challenged in civil society, you know, and not being as effective as, okay, sorry, I'm with the African Development Bank, but I came from civil society, so forgive me if I speak as civil society. But part of the challenge for civil society is precisely the inability to come together and to work together. So then we begin to define it as a crowded field when in fact it is a fragmented field. And you could be so much more effective and so much more powerful just by working together. Let me go back to your question in terms of how do we bring all the stakeholders together to work together. Unfortunately, we have actually entered the era where governance is no longer just for government. Governance really has become a shared space. You know, citizens have expectations not only from government, they have expectations from the private sector. They have expectations from donors. They have expectations from, you know, civil society organizations. They even have expectations from the opposition parties. You know, they expect them to deliver something. So it's a shared space, and I think it is important that we actually begin to deliver on it. Let me talk about the political commitment of government. You know, CADIP is an interesting framework, an important framework actually, if we're going to achieve our goals and our potential for feeding Africa. This is the continent that has, you know, the majority of the remaining arable land, and yet it is also the continent where, you know, those who provide, you know, grow the food can barely feed themselves. So the madness of spending $35 billion a year importing food has got to end. I do want to comment on the commitment of governments, you know, in terms of feeding Africa and so on. It's been 12 years or 13 years since the Maputo Declaration, in which our leaders committed to, you know, to spend 10% of their budgets on agriculture. Granted, there are many sort of demands and pressures on our leaders and on our governments. You know, they have to provide health, they have to provide education, and so on and so forth. But it's been like pulling teeth to get that 10%. You know, so everybody has got to do their part. Governments have to do their part. That commitment of Maputo was renewed 2 years ago in Malabo. And I think it was renewed because of really a renewed determination and realization that it is important. So now I think we really begin the count from the Malabo Declaration that something will actually happen. But at the same time, all of us have to do what we need to do. Talking about the Indian experience, one thing we've learned is that government's role actually is to be a catalyst. So, you know, the 10% is not going to change the world, but it's part of the policy environment and the policy interventions that will change the space and that will change and create the opportunities for people to be engaged, for civil society to be engaged, for farmers to work harder, for private sector to be enticed to be in agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to come to the floor in just a short while. I do want to just take another round delving into what you've just mentioned. And so I'll come to each of the panelists very quickly. In terms of the partnerships, and I will say, one of the partners or stakeholders that I'm most disappointed in is actually private sector. And I do understand private sector avoids risk, I do understand all these things, but there is such huge opportunity in Africa feeding herself. And in some parts we see people spilling milk because of maybe lack of access or challenges of pricing, while others are desperate for the commodity and they're importing powdered milk from another continent. So some of these things are staggering that private sector hasn't come in and made more use of the space. Private sector may argue that government is not doing enough for them to take that space. So I want us to have a very robust discussion now, before we go to the floor, on what different partners need to put on the table right now for the transformation to happen, and especially for civil society organizations to then be effective partners in ensuring that we are able to feed Africa. Kamal, let me come to you first. Yeah. Yes.
I've been looking for this opportunity. I had worked in private sector also. I was with Reliance Retail, and now probably you must be aware that all corporates have been asked to earmark 2% of their earnings towards CSR. It's a corporate social responsibility. And that's another opportunity for us, that generally these funds are getting in the hands of civil societies. And they are the ones who are implementing small projects. And on the other hand, if you look at some of the corporate sectors who are into agribusiness, they are ensuring that consumer get best of the product. And because of that, there is a value addition. And they are the ones who are trying to encourage farmers on one side. If there could be linkages where farmers can supply produce directly to the corporate, organized, at the same time, if they can directly provide it to the consumer through even e-commerce or door-to-door delivery, that can increase their value. So corporate sector as such is coming forward, but then they have their own limitation. If you ask them to invest in basic infrastructure, generally they'll take a back seat. Like when I was with Dairy Board, and as Mr. David had rightly talked about Amul, it was the same organization which I was referring to. That was the first society which was formed in 1946. And finally, it took shape of Amul, which has become a global brand now in dairy industry. And now taking lead from that particular thing, now if it comes to infrastructure investment into infrastructure, it can be done either by government agencies or some kind of a bankers who come forward and do that. But when it comes to giving variable kind of a support on daily basis, if you want somebody to support and get earning at the end of the day, then probably corporate sector is all willing to come forward because it ultimately leads to their business. This is what we have been doing in case of fruits and vegetables. We are the biggest, in Reliance, we were the biggest chain of retail network in the country. And one of the major vertical was fruits and vegetables. We have always been trying to put total pressure on farmers, and in case we were finding it difficult to get in touch with directly in touch with the farmers, then service societies were turning out to be a great help to us. So I think there is enough of a scope which can lead to this kind of a partnership also.
So Dorothy, to you, what do we need to see from the different partners, and what's your ask? What do you need to be more effective?
Under Feed Africa, I think there are two big initiatives that the bank has, the TAT and app. TAT is on the technology dissemination, and app is the technology generation. And we see a lot of potential there because in terms of technology generation, the app, we want to be part of that as a partner. We want to be seen as a partner because whatever research that is being done, I think we have a potential to influence the research to be gender responsive. And we also have potential to increase the participation of women researchers at the generation level. The same with dissemination. So we want to be on the table, to be recognized that we can influence. We work with the different partners who are involved in the generation of technologies that are both gender responsive, but also respond to the needs, special needs of the women that are the masses. And then policy level, I think as civil society generally, civil society needs to make more noise, and I think there's potential in making noise using data. It's very powerful because we have experience with developing what we call the women's empowerment model, and it says that if you give this amount of hours in mentoring a woman or mentoring a researcher, I give them certain skills, they're likely to increase their productivity and most probably be more visible in whatever they are doing. So to influence that policy, I think we have not taken advantage of the data because technology is such that with the ICTs, you can use data within Africa, but we can also import like the experience that we have from Asia or from other countries. So data is very critical in making noise. You don't have to make noise by just making noise, but proving that what works and what doesn't work. And I would like to also highlight that I think where we have failed in general is that we don't document our experiences, what worked well, what hasn't worked, and why. So we keep going back to reinventing the wheel, and I think it's high time that we did a lot more in terms of knowledge management and really documenting what, because we've been around for many years. I mean, Africa has been doing agriculture, and what has not worked, and why is it not working?
Absolutely essential. So we are always talking about data gaps, information gaps, inability to make informed decisions because of some of those gaps, and yet we're saying there is data. We can access certain data. But more than that, our academic institutions and their participation in Feed Africa, case studies in universities, you know, and I might come to that discussion. On how perhaps we can see more partnerships between civil society organizations and academia to really advance the agenda. Lucy, let me come to you, and I can see you thinking very deeply, so I believe you have a lot to share.
Thank you. Julie, I'm just really thinking because private sector need to take their seat to deliver, and we are only going to achieve this transformation when the private sector in Africa take their rightful position. And unfortunately, there's so many problems here and there, challenges. And one of them, first of all, let's agree there are different types of private sector. We have the SMEs, and we have our big brothers, the corporates. The corporates, they can't continue buying former smallholder farmers and the SMEs because of lack of, proper hygiene standards, and the government needs to incentivize, to ensure that the corporates are buying from these SMEs and the smallholder farmers. Because if the government continue, with their taxing policies that doesn't favor the local, the national, or the African produce, which, of course, we are unable to compete with the international market, then definitely we do not see how our own private sector in Africa are progressing. And this calls for a very serious look and readdressing the way the government, the policy, the business environment, and the incentives that the government can give to the private sector to ensure that they are able to nurture them and they grow within their place here in Africa, not here. I forgot I'm not in Africa.
We feel so at home, we forgot and we thought we're in Africa.
We love being here, and it's been nice. And two, our SMEs, we all know that the majority of African business is the SMEs. And if we don't start looking at SMEs in a very solid way, then we definitely are not going to make it. First and foremost, the SMEs have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges here and there. I like some of the things that Africans are starting to do, the African governments. For instance, when I look at my country, Kenya, when they have come up with the special economic zones, where you just allocate these to support the businesses, the small businesses, clustering them, ensuring that they are able to manage their business and have the services at nearer, where they can be able to get all what they need at the same place. This is really the way to go, clustering these SMEs. And not forgetting that our SMEs are going to be the future of our continent. And I really want to urge and make this statement. The way forward is us addressing all these problems of our SMEs and remembering that we are going to transform our African agriculture through the development of our SMEs.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And what I'm really taking top of mind from that is we need policy interventions that even compel the corporates to engage with the small businesses and presumably also that help to compel civil society organizations to improve the conditions and the standards and the quality of the small and medium-sized suppliers. Uma, your thoughts on the different things we need to see the partners do to enhance the ability of CSOs to intervene and transform the agricultural agenda?
See, the way it's...
a little bit closer.
Yeah, the way we do it in India is that the government creates infrastructure, institutions, policies. And then the private sector, mostly, I mean, Kamal was talking about a few names. They operate to take the produce from the farmers, artisans, etc. They provide the most important thing, which is the market for them, basically. So I feel that we have been having a very, very positive experience in the run towards this stage. The evolution in the stage which is we are sitting now is that the government is even trying to do things like non-collateral based loans for farmers and farmer bodies like farmer producer organizations, etc. That we have been talking of the risk associated with individual farmers. To a great extent, the risk is mitigated by way of organizing yourself better and doing it. I am not going to comment on the politics portion of it because many of the panelists did that. But what I see is when farmers know that there is positivity and there is revenue in that, then that's probably the right way to do it. And that's number one. Number two, the initiatives where I would love to see more traction happening would be to encourage climate-smart agriculture or something which would withstand the effects of vagaries of climate. We have been, with reasonably less success with monsoon last year, still we had record crops, basically. I'm talking of India. When I look at it, we have leveraged knowledge going up to a particular level. But it has to actually percolate to the individual's level to make a difference in their household and at their level. That is where the policy needs to empower the farmer producer organizations or the farming family to operate, basically.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you brought up climate-smart agriculture because this is a huge challenge we're facing and it doesn't seem that there's enough interventions on the ground to really give the farmers the support they need to adopt new technologies or modes of operation. Please, David, your thoughts on what we need to see happening, what different partners need to intervene to really enhance the work CSOs are doing.
So President Adesina says he's the chief optimist. So you're about to hear comments from the chief pragmatist. And Julie, just interrupt me because this is going to go for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So we're in the throes of a bunch of craziness that nobody wants to admit, because if you admitted how crazy it was, you'd have to kind of start over with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals. I was at a conference in Oslo, great leader, great social enterprise leader, speaking to the audience very optimistically about the fact that we could put together the $3 trillion that we need to do the SDGs. I love this guy. He just didn't realize it was $3 trillion per year. Makes you a bit less optimistic. The belief that the private sector will save us is bullshit.
Wow.
Okay? Very quick story. India has a CSR law. It requires 2% of profits to be spent doing good stuff. One other country has had a CSR law for 24 years. That country is South Africa. That country, when they begin the CSR, it's called CSI in South Africa, when they begin that effort, they had some really serious problems, obviously. The most serious one was correctly diagnosed by the companies, the private sector as we're calling them, to be education. They had 5,000 good schools and 20,000 failing schools. The corporations then invested 45% of their 1% in education, and they did that for 24 years in a row. South Africa's, does anybody know what South Africa's education ranking is? The World Education Rankings come out each year. So when they began the 24-year process, they were 148. That's the last spot. That's the bottom of the ranking. 24 years of investment, and South Africa is still 148, i.e. last.
Okay, so David, I'm going to prod you. So what's the bottom line?
So the bottom line is that the private sector is not good at doing the kind of stuff we talk about. And if we expect them to do that, we're using them totally inappropriately. The reason sustainable models are so critical is because sustainable models that come from, not from corporates, they come from social enterprises. Those models can direct the corporate effort to doing the things that they're good at instead of doing this junk.
Noted.
And just very quickly,
yes.
Apple is spending 90% of its Indian CSR on Barefoot College. They're concentrating all their CSR resource on one scalable model. Nobody else is doing that. Most of the rest of India is spending their CSR the same way South Africa spent theirs.
Okay, Kamal is dying to jump into this, so please go ahead and then I'm coming to the floor.
I'm sorry, I beg to differ with you, Mr. David, when it came to private sector. They are definitely going to contribute, they have been contributing, but the direction is a little different. And again, answering to ma'am, when she was saying that we must accept whatever is being offered by SME to encourage them. I also beg to differ. Instead of that, if we involve social societies, civil societies over there, and support them, then SMEs would come up to the level where private sector wants them to be. Today, if we look at India, we are into retail sector. And retail sector is growing, and the kind of improvements which have taken place in quality, packaging of fruits and vegetables, especially fruits and vegetables, is tremendous. And that is turning out to be kind of a requirement of them. And we being in social society now, in civil society now, are trying to attempt that at village level. We'll graduate them to that level where ultimately it would meet the requirement of a consumer. And for that, we are getting support from government. We are getting support from government in terms of establishing packing stations at village level itself, giving them contribution towards organizing good packing material. All kind of subsidies are into picture. And there are subsidies for cold storages. Take care of your produce, keep it intact for some time, you'll get a value. Today, what is happening in case of Indian apple is same. It is being produced only for 2-3 months, but it continues for 8 months as far as consumer is concerned. And if somebody is there to address this infrastructure cost, then probably private sector is the one which can raise the expectation and meet expectation of consumer by raising produce quality at farmers level. I'm sorry if I've hurt you, sir.
No, thank you for your contribution. Okay, very briefly, Lucy,
briefly.
You have to, I know you have to come in.
I want to disagree with him. The SMEs in Africa have to be supported for them to be able to come up and compete and be able to transform our economy. I have said yet again that the change we are looking for, the transformation in agriculture in Africa is going to be achieved through the development of SMEs. How do we do that? The SMEs in Africa have a lot of requirements. They need to be supported in terms of incubation, business incubation. They need to be supported to be able to come up with the right standards of products to be able to compete with the other companies and be able to get the global.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yes.
Thank you, Lucy. And I think Uma took us through quite a process of that transformation from the cooperatives coming together. Talked about the incubation. David, literally 10 seconds, and I'm going to the floor. You need the mic up, please.
That's a great example where our assumptions about the way things should work are just dead wrong. There's thousands of incubators operating across Africa. They are throwing away money because there's no time invested in figuring out which SMEs should be getting the support. The best African entity on this is Raise Corp. Alon Raise in South Africa has a completely different model that spends 2/3 of the resources figuring out who should get the support. They've helped thousands of entrepreneurs in South Africa, but totally focused on bringing the corporate support to a specific set of highly selective SMEs and focusing all the support on those guys and making them wildly successful.
Thank
and
you.
Then moving on to the next.
Thank you. I'm not necessarily an expert, but from an African perspective, my big thing would be give access to finance that is affordable and easily accessible to all these small and medium-sized businesses, give them capacity through civil society organizations and other initiatives, build policy to make it work, and let them fly. But I want to come to the floor now, and Natalie's with us from Sahel. Natalie Ebo, please, would you share your perspectives? You've heard quite a robust panel discussion ongoing. We'd like your thoughts on this.
Sure. So Natalie Ebo from Sahel. I think we all agree that all the parties are needed at the table, right? You need the civil society, you need private sector, you need the government, and everybody has a specific role to play. We talked about challenges, whether it is that people have different agendas, it's fragmented, how do you bring everyone together? So for Sahel, we are a management consulting firm, and we're solely focused on agriculture and nutrition. So what we think our role is and our comparative advantage, as Sifo was asking when she did the introduction, is bringing everyone together, right? Because everyone has a role to play, but how do you bring everyone together? How do you make it work? How do you, as an entity doesn't have a hidden agenda, because we are neutral, can talk through all the steps from defining the problem, making sure everyone has a voice, making sure you're influencing or identifying the role and clearly defining the role that everyone has to play. How do you make the trade-offs between the social goals that maybe the civil society is pushing versus the business goal that the private sector wants to push? How does it all come together? How do you set targets and monitor those targets to make sure they are achieved? So those are the roles that we play. So let me just illustrate through a brief example. We talked about the white revolution. So in Nigeria, we're trying to transform the dairy sector. And so we're leading a 2-year proof of concept model for that. So as part of that, our role is we're bringing the government that has to create the enabling environment, both at the federal level as well as the state level, bringing the 2 dairy processors that are providing the market, as well as some of the funding. Through the civil society, working with the dairy farmers. At this point, it's very fragmented, very basic. Right? So what role do they have to play? How do we cluster them? How do we work with them to provide the milk? There's productivity improvement that are injected to build up the capacity and build training. But you need someone to coordinate all of that. So that's the role that we play.
I'm going to move on now, but I just have one quick question before I go. Are you engaging with academia? The universities and are they part of the stakeholders?
Yes, they are, because you have to, in bringing technology, we're talking to them through feed, etc., so to bring that technology also to the table.
Excellent, really good to hear that. Yes, gentlemen over here, can I see other hands? Yes, Maria over here at the front, if you'd hand the mic over. I'll go to the gentleman and then to Maria. I will come back to you in just a moment, please.
Shukran.
Please go ahead. No, go ahead and then Maria will speak after. Thank you.
سأتكلم بالعربية، ربما هي المداخلة الوحيدة بالعربية تكون في هذه الندوة. شكرا. على كل لابد معنا أتكلم. أنا عبد المجيد الزار، رئيس الاتحاد المنظمة الإفريقية للفلاحين بافو. في البداية لابد أن نتحدث لما نتحدث عن الفلاحة في إفريقيا لابد أن نتحدث عن صغار الفلاحين الذين هم يمثلون 85%. هذا أولا. ثانيا، لما نتحدث عن الفلاحة لابد أو عن الفلاحين أو عن المجتمع المدني لابد أن نتحدث عن من يمثل الفلاحين. هنا لابد أن نتحدث أولا عن التعاونيات أو التعاضديات لكوبيراتيف، وأيضا أن نتحدث على أن هؤلاء الفلاحين أي حلقة الإنتاج هي الأساسية. وهنا لما نتحدث عن حلقة الإنتاج لأن كل المداخلات تحدثت عن ما بعد الإنتاج، نتحدث عن القطاع الخاص، الأغلب يتحدث عن القطاع الخاص ما بعد الإنتاج، في حين أن الإنتاج كله خاص أو في أغلبه، لأن الدولة لا تملك لا تنتج. الذين ينتجون هم الفلاحون، هم المزارعون، وبالتالي أنهم صحيح مشتتون، والتشتت هو الذي جعل منهم ضعفاء لا يقدرون على الدفاع عن حقوقهم. وهنا تكون سواء كانت التعاضديات أو المنظمات الفلاحية هي من يمثل، هي التي تجمع هؤلاء صغار الفلاحين. فلا بد أن نعطي حقا لهؤلاء معنا في الحلقة. أيضا لابد أن نتحدث هنا، ليس هنالك صراع بين ما هو ما بعد الإنتاج أو ما قبل الإنتاج أو الإنتاج، لابد أن نتحدث عن سلاسل القيمة لشين دو فالور. هنا نتحدث على أن الربح ربح، لأن الفلاحين ازدادوا فقرا لما استعمل لجشع السوق، لما استغلوا، لما أن أصبح محصولهم إما أن يباع بأرخص الأثمان أو أن يتلف. ونسبة الإتلاف في إفريقيا للمنتوج تقريبا، وقد تحدثت عن معناها الإتلاف الحليب أو غيره، فالإتلاف يمثل تقريبا 30%. وبالتالي لابد أن لما نتحدث عن سلاسل القيمة ونتحدث عن لابد أن أيضا نقطة أخرى لما نتحدث عن الدعم، وفي أغلبه دائما الدعم يوجه إلى ما بعد الإنتاج، يعني أنه للاستهلاك أو للتصنيع أو لغيره، فالفلاحون غير مستفيدين من أي دعم. وهنا يزداد أيضا معناها تفقير الفلاحين. فهل يمكن أن نتحدث الآن عن تغذية إفريقيا وهي النقطة الثانية للبنك، في حين هل يمكن أن نسأل سؤال هل أن الجائع يمكن أن يغذي الآخر؟ شكرا.
Thank you. Wow, can a hungry person feed others? So very, very, very pertinent points. Thank you for sharing them. I'll come straight to the front now to Maria, please.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about first the African Development Bank's comparative advantage, which I think is an important thing here because you rarely find different schools of thought sitting together. The African Development Bank is in a very unique position in that it is funded by governments, it gives funding to governments, and now it is trying to create a partnership with civil society that government believes is a body that works against them. And I think the first thing we need to talk about is changing that perception and government looking at civil society and all these non-state actors as partners who complement their work. And so I don't think anybody in front here is wrong, apart from David, because I have lived through a transformation in Nigeria, a successful partnership between government changing policy and regulatory frameworks, civil society providing the e-wallet to women at the bottom of the pyramid to allow them access to seeds and fertilizer, and private sector picking up and mopping up all the crops to have a successful sort of agricultural value chain, if you may call it. So I believe it's possible. What I'd like to say is I think with the convening power of ADB and people stop being as fragmented as we are, thinking about others as private sector or not wanting to be called civil society. For me, I believe anybody who is not government and stands for something is actually civil society. Now, what we need to teach more, and I think that starts from the very basic, is civil society needs to learn how to advocate for change in policy. And if you talk to the masters at the bottom of the pyramid, they don't know how to take a bill to parliament, how to select a leader who will support agriculture.
How to lobby.
Yes, how to lobby. So the training starts with that. Then we go into business development skills and things like that. So it was just a comment. I really didn't have a question. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And, I think the word there is trust. And we will come back. I can see everybody wants to jump in. The word there is trust. And how do we ensure we're building trust across all these critical stakeholders? I want to take maybe 2 more comments, then come back to the floor. Wow, I see all the hands. Oh, Sifo, you want to jump? Okay, I'm coming back. Sifo, Kamal, and David. I'll come to you.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Look, I think Maria has hit the nail on the head. It's really about, finding a way to work with government. Dorothy talked about, being able to make noise that's, data-driven or data evidence-based, noise, and so on. But the thing I said when I was in civil society is, you're only going to make a difference, not from behind the picket fence and carrying the placards. That's really important as well. But the only time you're going to make a difference is when you can get in the door and sit around the table and find a way to work and partner with government. I insist that governance is now a shared responsibility. It is no longer just the business of government, it is the business of government, private sector, civil society, opposition parties, you name it. Everybody has a responsibility now because citizens look up to all of the stakeholders to make that difference. So what is most important, and I think the way we can be more effective, is really finding that partnership, just finding that sweet spot where we all work together, but particularly in terms of working with government. Right. That is really crucial because it is through policy advocacy, which is the thing that I did in civil society, was policy advocacy, really. It is through policy advocacy that we can influence government in its role for providing infrastructure, strengthening institutions, providing, the access to finance, security of tenure, all of sort of the policy and legal frameworks and so on and so forth. So just finding that sweet spot where we can work together and civil society can still hold government accountable, I think that's important. Part of the challenge, the elephant in the room, the elephant in the room, I think, is that a lot of the time our funding becomes a source of soft power. So I think it's also, that's something that we don't talk about, the source of funding, because that funding becomes soft power, depending on where it comes from. So I think it's really important that we really begin to look at those things and begin to find, indigenous funding, sustainable forms of running our civil society organizations so that the civil society organizations are on the same page and working in the same direction with the government objectives, for ending poverty, improving the lives of people, feeding their citizens and so on. So that's something no one talks about, but it's something that needs to be.
Thank you for bringing it up. Kamal, you wanted to jump in on the issue of the academia.
I'll also try to address his question. He rightly said that somebody has to work in the beginning to ensure that production goes up. We have been talking about things on the surface. When production is there, there are a lot of people to help you out. As you are rightly saying, probably that was the genesis of having Green Revolution and White Revolution. So there has to be somebody to invest, and probably private sector would not invest in this kind of a thing. For that, we got to depend upon government. The first move has to come from them. Probably civil society would turn out to be handy in terms of making localized efforts. And then at a right stage, private sector would come in, and probably they'll help us in improving the standard and ensuring to some extent that produce is being accepted at a fairly high price. Now, linking it up with what she said in the beginning, that there would always be a resistance, and there was a resistance, as you rightly said when you were talking about cooperative. That was there in case of India also. And it was Dr. Kurian who came forward and he fought it alone. But in the process, as you were talking about academia, he developed an institution by the name of Institute of Rural Management, where he was trying to develop some mini Koreans who could take up this kind of a challenge, who could face the resistance, and be slightly more inclined to work towards farmers at the grassroots level. And on a similar line, we have some other institutions, like we have Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, with a special focus on agriculture. And incidentally, we have product here. Mr. Uma is a very senior colleague of mine. He's from IIM Ahmedabad.
Thank you.
Whereas I graduated from Dr. Kurian's Institute, Rural Management, some 30 years back. So maybe this kind of a thing where complete motion and it turns out to be in favor of working for farmers.
Thank you.
Then probably you will have some leaders to pick up the hands, and the farmers would be addressed in the beginning itself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. David, please.
So I'll just...
Mike, please. There's a mic here. Oh, we could pass the mic. Could someone help me just... Thank you so much, Zainab, please. Yes. And I'm coming back to the floor, yes. Very quickly, David.
So
thank you.
my bullshit comment was designed to get your attention.
And it did.
What the corporations, what the private sector should be doing is scaling. That's what they're good at. That's what they know how to do. They just don't know what to scale. So they hand off their money to, don't take this wrong, but some nonprofit folks, and those folks go and do small things that don't embarrass anybody. Absolutely wrong thing to do.
Okay.
Take your corporate resource, take your private sector resource, and focus it on scaling one of the most scalable models. Megan Fallone and Bunker Roy are the Barefoot College leaders.
Okay.
They're in Silicon Valley right now. Apple is redesigning their entire product to be fully recyclable. They're getting that done for free. Neelam Cheeber, who was on the Fashionomics panel, is getting her $15 million digital network to which 1 million artisans will be connected, built by world-class tech companies for free as part of their CSR. They're concentrating their resources and they're scaling.
Thank you, David. I'm bringing it to the floor. I see all the hands. I'll start with the gentleman with the mic, then we'll go to the back, and we'll come forward. We'll come forward. We want to incorporate as many views as we can, so please make it short, but do make your statement. Thank you, yes.
Hi there. Thank you so much to all the panelists. My name is Anirudh Nagar. I work for an organization called Accountability Council. We support communities around the world who've been harmed by projects that are financed by development finance institutions such as the African Development Bank. And we support them to raise their concerns and their grievances to these banks, mostly through approaching the boards of the banks, bank management, as well as through the independent accountability mechanisms of these banks. Now, the independent accountability mechanism at the African Development Bank, known as the Independent Review Mechanism, the IRM, has seen very few complaints come to it. And so I think it's great that we have a civil society panel and increasing engagement with civil society as being a key commitment. I'm just getting to my question very briefly.
I think you need to be very fast. You've taken quite a bit of time already. Go ahead. Very quickly.
I really wanted to just ask Ms. Sifo what the bank is doing to ensure that communities can approach the bank, whether it be in agribusiness or otherwise, when their rights have been violated or they have concerns about a project.
Thank you. So, Sifo, what the bank is doing, we'll come back to you on that. Gentleman right at the back, if you could actually come forward a little bit to the lady with the mic. Thank you. Go ahead, very quickly.
Thank you very much. My name is Jackson Kiplagat. I work for WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. I think this is a very interesting discussion of both extremes. And I think we need to ask ourselves the very important question. What is the role of civil society? Is it to replace government or is it to replace private sector? We have a role as civil society, and it is not to replace any of them. And the role is to ensure that for the agricultural sector to succeed, what do we have in terms of enabling conditions, in terms of policy, that facilitates cooperatives to be able to do what they are supposed to do, that facilitates farmers to access inputs to be able to produce, that facilitates private sector to be able to do business, that facilitates the sector to be sustainable, that facilitates the sector to access financing.
Thank you.
Whether small scale, small, medium enterprise, from business to production.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I see a gentleman there. Please walk this way. Thank you so much. And I do see the hands at the front. I'm making my way there. Thank you. Go ahead.
OK, merci beaucoup. On m'appelle Roger Kaloua. Je viens de la RDC. I'm going to repeat it for you. Yeah, je disais, on m'appelle Roger Kaloua. Je viens de la RDC et pour prolonger un peu sa réflexion, je vais donner un petit témoignage du travail que nous faisons. Alors, je travaille pour une organisation qui s'appelle Winmax Corporation et qui est normalement de private sector. Mais le travail que nous faisons, c'est supporter ou collaborer, aider le partenariat entre le secteur public et la société civile, principalement dans la prise en charge des communautés. Et la prise en charge des communautés ici, ce sont les éléments principaux, notamment surtout dans la bande est de notre frontière avec Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan. Et là, nous aidons à transformer les agents communautaires, je veux dire les membres de ces communautés locales, à devenir les agents de développement de leur propre communauté. Et là, principalement, nous travaillons avec les ex-combattants, vous voyez, ceux qui ont fait la guerre. Alors, non seulement en prolongeant les projets DDR, qui est le désarmement, démobilisation, réinsertion et réintégration des ex-combattants, nous leur apportons une éducation, ce qu'on peut appeler la vocational education. Alors, certains se convertissent en agriculture, d'autres en certains autres métiers. Et nous leur apportons ces soutiens-là, non seulement à leur donner $100, parce qu'il y a la Banque mondiale, la Banque africaine qui envoie un peu de fonds pour que ces gens-là puissent laisser tomber les armes. Mais au-delà de ça, nous les accompagnons avec une éducation pour que non seulement ils utilisent $100 dans leur travail, mais qu'ils utilisent $100 à devenir propriétaires de l'action qu'ils vont prendre. Et nous retenons deux éléments principaux, c'est accountability and responsibility dans le travail de ce qu'ils sont en train de faire. Merci.
Thank you. What incredible work. Let's give him a round of applause, please, because that's exactly the kind of transformation and the interventions that we need to change the continent. Gentlemen here on the third row, please, all the way forward. And then after you speak, you can hand it. Yes, oh, you have a mic. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Gideon Jalata. I work for Oxfam. I think the issue of policy, as identified, is very important. Next to policy is investment in research and technology, which demands the involvement of civil societies, to work on this, because African governments' investments and budgetary contribution for research and technology is very minimal. For example, we have identified in Oxfam how partners in this report engage in transforming the agriculture sector in Africa. For example, the Asian Green Revolution was spearheaded by rice and wheat. That cannot be replicated in Africa. The African case demands a unique experience in the way that there are indigenous products that must be emphasized in Africa. These are like the sorghum, the millet, the cassava, and plantain must be emphasized because the world's production of Africa in this product is very high. So in this regard, civil societies can contribute by experience sharing and also investments in research and technology. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Gentleman right next to you. Thank you.
Hi, okay. My name is Apollos. I work with Oxfam also. I think the first thing I'd like to say here is that the notion that civil society cannot provide thought leadership or like engage government is not absolutely correct. Because of my experience, civil society have been supported to develop bills, develop policies. I think the challenge we're facing in Africa is the fact that there's a shrinking civil society space. We did a research, and I can tell you that globally, about 130 laws have been enacted in the last 3.5 years to close civil society space to be able to engage in certain sectors, and including agriculture. And that's because of private sector engagement with governments. That's the first thing. So we
very
need
quickly, yes.
Yeah.
Second.
So the second, so we need to make sure that one of the things that needs to happen to ensure that we're able to transform agriculture to wealth is to ensure that civil society's role is supported. And that means that we need to look at the broader political space within which civil society operates. A second is the fact that there's a quiet conflict within the private sector. Private sector is a broad word, but we need to understand that there are multinationals and the SMEs. And a deeper understanding of the private sector engagement will reveal that there's a conflict between the SMEs and the multinationals, and that's because it's a game of interest. One of the things we need to understand is that the SMEs need support, but the larger multinational corporations have different interests. So governments are trying to balance between supporting SMEs and ensuring that there are more jobs because they want to attract the multinational corporations. Yes. So that conflict needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Until we address that. And the third thing is the fact that the bank, the African Development Bank, or whatever multinational institutions are providing this support or value chain or access to finance need to understand that there are certain policies and strategies that are contextual, and that the actual people who need a greater part of this support are the smallholder farmers. That's one. And they need to ensure that the policies and the contracting for some of these businesses are giving powers to these smallholder farmers, because they provide 75% of our agricultural output in Africa.
Thank you.
They are the people.
Thank you, thank you. So I think, in terms of your first question, my understanding was not that the thought leadership is not there, it's the form of engagement, but I think your point is also very important, and I think there needs to be a dialogue had around the effectiveness, how to increase effectiveness of the CSOs, and how to face some of the challenges that you've highlighted that exist in certain environments. The lady at the front, thank you very much, and I see the other hands. I'm coming.
Thank you. I am Uma Swaminathan from Self-Employed Women's Association. We have promoted one social enterprises company called Rudy Multi-Trading Company. We have started with the private sector. I can share with Mr. Dr. David and Dr. Kamal. Actually, we have promoted this with the help of Unilever, Hindustan Unilever in 2004, year 4. But we have come to the level up to crossing 10 crore per annum, but we have stuck over there because the scaling up we have discussed, that is more important. But by the way, we have also benefiting 25,000 farmers, processors, and the Rudy team we call the marketing team, sales and marketing team. The beauty is capacity build is very important after the advanced level management. That is one CSR has to take. Otherwise, it will go back to that we don't want to do. The second, capacity, even the initial stage capacity building is very important in the term of CSR, public-private partnership is very important.
Thank you.
And the third point I would like to, after setting up the company, we also able to do the consultancy services, promote the social enterprises as how Unilever trained us, the same way we are also doing from the Asian country and other African countries as well.
Thank you for that experience.
Help us to
Thank you so much. That is really invaluable. I'm going to ask all the other speakers, please, to make it 30 seconds, because literally we are going to be late for the final session, plenary session. So I'll come to a gentleman here, and then the one with the mic next to you. Please go ahead. Go ahead, yes.
Mamadou Goïta du Mali. Bon, on va être assez bref, mais il y a des débats de fond, je crois, qu'on doit avoir sur cette question. Parce que j'ai l'impression qu'on se trompe beaucoup d'analyse. Première chose, on se trompe aujourd'hui au niveau d'organisation des paysans en Afrique. Les paysans sont très loin de là où on est en train de les décrire. Ils ne sont pas dispersés, ils sont ensemble. Il a parlé de la PAFO, du niveau des villages aujourd'hui de l'Afrique, tous les pays, jusqu'au niveau panafricain, vous avez des organisations. Ça veut dire qu'il y a des espaces identifiés aujourd'hui pour investir dans l'agriculture. Deuxième élément, il est reconnu aujourd'hui internationalement que si on parle de nourrir l'Afrique et créer de la richesse, parce que c'est nourrir l'Afrique, Feed d'Afrique, ça veut dire nourrir l'Afrique. Il faut qu'on analyse dans cette perspective. Un, que dans le monde entier, 63% de la nourriture ne dépasse pas 100 km. C'est les statistiques connues à la FAO. 63% ne dépasse pas 100 km. Ça veut dire quoi? Là où on produit, c'est là où on organise le marché. Et c'est pour ça que la production de la nourriture en Afrique n'intéresse pas les entreprises privées. Troisième élément, il n'y a que 20% de la nourriture qui va sur le marché international. Ça n'intéresse pas. Donc il faut qu'on investisse sur les paysans dans le pays, sur les secteurs privés nationaux dans les pays et régler le problème de marché. Donc je pense qu'on se trompe d'analyse.
Please go ahead.
I'll keep it short. My name is Wycliffe from Uganda. I work for a Finnish NGO called Finchurch Aid. I wanted to make a contribution to my sister who talked about the SMEs. I have seen how the tax bodies, for example, Uganda Revenue Authority, how they harass SMEs. And my point would be, if we're mobilized, supported, if we supported SMEs to grow, to be competitive and to be sustainable, they would make a significant contribution. If multinationals closed in Africa, most of our economies would collapse. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gentleman here at the back.
Hi, my name is Pratyush and I'm representing a research organization which is under Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Within it, I mean, Dr. Sifu made a very valid point that a marriage needs to take place between research organizations, civil society, and the government. So within our research institute, we have come up with a platform named as Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, which is a tripartite initiative between the policymakers, the academicians, and civil society to come together and discuss and deliberate on development cooperation and South-South cooperation. And we really encourage Indian civil society organizations not only to work in India, but also to venture out in countries of Africa and in our neighborhood. So I just wanted to flag this issue to all of you.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to take any more questions. I'm going to come right back to the floor because of time. I will ask each of the panelists. Some questions were asked, and if we can discuss with panelists after we wind up, please do. However, can you give us a 30-second parting shot? If there is a key message that you want to leave people with today, what would that be? And Lucy, I'll start with you. What's your parting shot?
My parting shot is clear. I want to see Africa mobilizing their SMEs. And I'm very keen to see a Pan-African movement of SMEs in agribusiness, and that is the way we are going to transform African agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Uma, your parting shot.
Yeah, my parting shot would be to focus on innovation, focus on entrepreneurs who are building innovative models, especially in the area of agriculture, taking help from technology, and then try to believe and arrive at a very optimum model for production as well as the market, basically. Like, without that, long-term sustainability we wouldn't be able to build. So we need to look at the innovation aspect in agriculture through, David would disagree, but as such, through whichever initiative, be it incubation, be it through private sector participation, whatever it is.
Thank you very much. David, parting shot.
Well, there's so much passion in this room. I'm really glad SEVA is here. We consider them one of the top 10 scale opportunities in the world. There are others. Everybody needs to use their network to affect change. And the change needs to be moving towards sustainability. And you do that by breaking down silos, bypassing the people who just want to talk, bypassing the people who think it's other people's responsibility to get the work done, getting together the people who can actually affect change, finding the models that are right for you, for your talent, for your creativity, for your leadership, for your country.
Thank you.
Don't accept other people's recommendations about how you create value.
Thank you.
You're the value creators.
Dorothy.
I think we're all going to one place. We want full security and some money for farmers in their pocket. How we get there is a challenge. You can see that from the discussions that are going on. But we need to speak with one voice. And that one voice is finding out what is our comparative advantage and picking up the lessons. What has worked? What doesn't work? Whether it is from within Africa or what we learn from outside, to move with one voice.
Thank you so much, Kamal.
Thank you so much. If I have to sum up, I'll say that leaving aside with due respect to CSOs, all are equally important. If we really want to see the development through, I think CSOs, agencies, government, private, corporate, all are equally important and they should be given due respect. On one side, we should look at farmer as one of our biggest stakeholder. They should get worth of their produce. On the other side, we should look at our ultimate consumer. I mean, we as a consumer, we should get best of everything. And in the process, if corporate is making a little more money, I think we should allow them to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give myself a parting shot as well because Sifo will have the final word here today. So allow me, Sifo, to just say that for me, this conversation has been particularly fascinating. And I think coming to listen to the panel and the participants here today, I'm asking myself, who is an African farmer? Do we really know who this farmer is? I'm asking myself, what is the role of civil society? And I think there needs to be a more robust engagement in all this. I want to challenge civil society in this room now to really take a look at the way you engage with partners. As a media personality, I find civil society incredibly abrasive and resistance to find a new model of working. It might be something you want to consider. Maybe we can all be friends and sing Kumbaya in the room together. If government is in this room now, I want you to know that civil society is there to help you deliver on your agenda, which ultimately means that you will win the next election, hopefully, if you work properly with civil society organizations and give the transformation on the ground. So I think there's room to further define what we're talking about. I think there's room to partner better and to build more trust. And I think we owe it to Africans to do that. We cannot posture. We cannot sit looking at each other as if we are in this together. We are in this together. I see someone saying no, but we are. And we owe it to Africans. We do owe it to Africans to transform things. The final thing I'm going to say, if we have all these civil society organizations in any environment, Africa, India, whatever, and yet our farmers are still struggling, is it not a bit of a shame? Is it not a shame to civil society? Is it not a shame to government? Is it not a shame to private sector? And so there is so much work to be done. So from my perspective, we need to just put our heads down and start to work. And let's please, I want to hand over to Sifo to make final closing remarks for this really impressive session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julia. I want to thank you, first of all, and I think we should give you a round of applause. You've done a fantastic job. And really, to close, I think I will give a parting shot as well. My parting shot is this. The African Development Bank is committed to working with civil society. As I made it clear in the beginning, we've realized and we know that we are not going to achieve our strategic goal of feeding Africa without civil society working with us. So we want to come along with you. We've made a lot of progress from when civil society was in the margins and the sidelines of the annual meetings to when civil society is actually in the main agenda of the annual meetings, as you can see here today. And following this, we will continue to have the Civil Society Forum at headquarters, every year. So really, the engagement is getting stronger. What is important, I think, is for you guys in civil society, know your value proposition. How do you add value? And bring that to the table. Understand the theory of change and use that to engage other stakeholders, in particular government, for those of you who are involved in policy advocacy work. So those are the things that I think are really, really key. We want to work with civil society, but at the end of the day, above all things, just picking up on Julie's point about being abrasive and so on, I think as long as civil society has a role to hold government and other parties accountable, civil society also has a role to be held accountable and to hold itself accountable. I think this is the missing link. Civil society thinks that it is its job to hold government accountable, but you must equally be accountable in order for this partnership and engagement to work. So thank you so much to everyone for being here. We're really looking forward to working closer with civil society. Zainab is our lead here. Maria is the strategic advisor on civil society. So, you've got a lot of people at the bank. The president is really committed, and that's why he's getting all of us really involved in making sure that we're, working closely with civil society and finding the best partnership for the bank with civil society and for civil society with the bank. Thank you.